and today we are here to discuss Arthouse Loser. I will warn everyone up front, I have a lot of good things to say about this independent 40-odd minute film. It warmed my heart. It is something that, and this is quite rare in my life at this point, I was glad to watch. I was glad to enjoy, and it is something that I will, in fact, watch more than once. There is a very specific reason for that. A lot of BuzzFeediots and Tiki-Taki-Tardians think that making a film by oneself is easy. This proves that they, unlike NJ, unlike Mr. Magennis, ate a lot of lead-based paint chips as toddlers. It's almost as dirwad to say that as people whom don't understand how life drawing or proper inking practices affect a comic book. Only an imbecile would fail to see what NJ was forced to do by himself, almost like Philippe Drouillet from the best science fiction and horror French comics, and what he had to do in order to make this 41-minute film happen, in quotation marks. And what he made happen is not only admirable, but joyous. Now, to use some film terms, let's look at blocking and storyboards. In this film, Arthouse Loser, both are fab. When you are someone like NJ, Mr. Magennis, and you have no one to help you, and you are composing the shots in this visually compelling way, it is so much more valuable to an old-as-dirt horror fan, such as myself and others, than crappity-ass jump scares or a simple shot of boobies. Oh, the boobies. We don't have any visual talent, so let's just distract the audience with boobies. Boobies are valueless unless your film has value. Knowing that you only have yourself to rely upon, and setting up the cameras and then being smart enough to edit all of that properly. And the editing was fantastic in this film, by the way. I've seen some very sloppy editing, and that was not the case here. This editing was primo, and I greatly appreciate it. Setting up the cameras and then being smart enough to edit that properly makes all the difference. And sorry, Tiki-Taki, you guys are terrible at it. NJ, Mr. Magennis, knew enough to use a tree to lean upon in one of these shots, I'm going to show it here, in order to add subtext, visual subtext, something that a lot of Generation Y and their unfortunate subset known as millennials have forgotten about, or they decide subtext is simply too hard. And the use of the umbrella as a prop, fantabulous, as was the symbolism of the rose, in and out, in and out. It is a proper tribute to proper giallo versus some of the wannabe giallos and surrealist films that we've seen over the past 7 years. And a lot of the humor in this film, it might be current and indie, but it is not falling prey to the childish and imbecilic manner of comedy we see in a lot of other current indie films. It's very difficult to pull this off, particularly when you are only filming yourself and you only have very scarce voiceovers from other people. I think there were only 2. And a lot of times with proper comedy, you rely on other people to bounce off. So if you are basically only using yourself for the most part, for the comedic elements, it is much harder, and I heartily commend Mr. Magennis on his sense of humor and having it be original, having it be not just some other crap on TikTok, and it did help the film rather than hinder the film. And to be dreadfully honest, this stuff is very hard to do when you have a team of 6 people. But when you're doing it alone, I am amazed at Mr. Magennis's accomplishment. I mean, this is just sublime. And it is clear to me that he storyboarded the heck out of it before he even began, and planned all of his shots well in advance, which is what Roger Corman would do. Although I do think, as much as I love Roger Corman films, I do think that with a lower budget and absolutely less resources, Mr. Magennis did a little bit better here. And here we come to something that no money or budget can buy: the brains and the talent to conceive of classy, intriguing, and delicious visual compositions, working with camera angles which will and did excite several areas of the brain, but on top of that, be able to move us from one moment to the next, to convey 3 separate emotions over the course of only 5 minutes on a purely graphic level, with no dialogue, and also without becoming visually cluttered or falling over one's own creative feet, which is the meta-narrative irony, and a delicious one, because the protagonist is the titular Arthouse loser, and that is what real life art school film rejects do themselves. That is the failure they have themselves. And yet this film denies the failure. The person making the film using themselves to portray an art school reject is actually succeeding at what those rejects fail at. Not to put too fine a point on it, but blue hairs from Berkeley need not apply. Which leads us to the closing moments of NJ's film and this review. The fuck you to a globally renowned European artist is welcome, adroitly executed, pun intended, and perfectly in keeping with both the plot and the theme of the film, a beaut payoff for the setup, something very few people manage to pull off, pun again intended regarding the ending, these days. So well done, son. You earned your All Hallows Samhain candy and sláinte. Thank you for taking the time to make this. Thank you for having the charm put into it. Thank you for having your talent not be frustrated by circumstances. Thank you for Arthouse Loser.